Joining us from Lisbon, Portugal, we've got Marika Boileau and Erin Reim. How are you both doing?
Very good. Thank you.
Right on. So you're both obviously competing at the World Championship Kata 2021. That's happening on October 26th and 27th. That's tomorrow. Now, before we start talking about the competition, tell us a little bit about yourself. We'll start with Marika. How long have you been involved in the sport of judo? Why judo? And how did you get involved and interested in the sport?
Well, it's pretty interesting. In fact, I've been doing judo since I was 5 because my brother and I were always fighting with each other. So my mom's like subscribers to the judo. So since 5, I've been doing judo competition with a fight, normal judo. And after a lot of injuries, Erin, that we train each other since the age of 10, maybe 10 to 10, yeah. So we train with each other, and one day Erin came with me to say, "Hey, I'm looking for a partner to do kata." So I was pretty interested. So starting doing kata with Erin since I think it's been 2 years now.
Since 2018.
So
interesting. Follow-up question: what, if you don't mind me asking, what sort of injuries did you have from your competition days?
Concussion, and broke my coccyx, I think.
Wow.
We're in English.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, for you, Erin, how long have you been involved in the sport of judo? Why judo? And why did you get involved and interested in the sport?
So like Marika, I started when I was 5 years old. I was little, so it wasn't really my choice at the beginning. It was my parents who, they wanted me in some sort of self-defense sport, and they really took to judo because it's definitely a very peaceful, gentle way of doing self-defense, where it's a lot about like mentality instead of just like more aggression. And I was doing Shiai until about 15 or 16 years old. Like Marika, I had some injuries. And in addition to that, I felt like it was a sacrifice to do the Shiai at a very high level in some ways for me, because I take school very seriously. I really care about seeing friends, my social life. And I spoke to Sensei Nakamura, who who's our coach at Shidokan. And he found the bridge for me where I could do kata without giving up so much of the other parts of my life. So I started doing kata at 15 years old when I was practicing for my black belt, and I loved it so much that I just never stopped.
That's awesome, and you'll be competing at the World Championships now. So that's very interesting. Is this your first time for both of you competing at oh no, okay. To tell us about that, how many times have you competed at the Worlds?
So this is my 4th World Championships. Okay. So first one in Malta, then Italy, one in Mexico, and now Portugal.
Interesting. Now, if we could just go back a little bit, you mentioned, your interest in school. I think I read somewhere that you just had an exam on Friday or something like that recently, right? So can you tell us that story?
About my exam?
Yeah, because I read that you had an exam and then you had to leave or something like that.
So I'm at McGill right now. I'm finishing up my undergraduate degree, hopefully continuing in psychology.
Okay.
And so it's really easy to balance kata with school because the time required to train for kata, you have to be like very focused when you're training, but it's not like the more time you spend necessarily. It's about like the quality of your training sessions, which helps a lot with being able to have like lots of other hours in my day to focus on school.
Very interesting. We're going to get into that very shortly. Obviously here at you guys are in Lisbon, Portugal, as I mentioned from the top, and it's the World Championships. There's 25 countries, 206 competitors, 145 male and 45 women. Canada has sent 12 competitors in total. This is based on the IGF website, of course. And for perspective, Japan has sent 6 individuals, and whereas France has sent 24. So far, what's the mood like over there in Portugal?
It's pretty, I mean, at the hotel, it's amazing because getting to see all the competitors off the mat, it's an experience like in and of itself, which is really nice. And for us, because we haven't trained in a long time up until this year because of COVID, we were pretty like fragmented from the rest of the team. And so this is actually the first time that I've been with the Canadian team again in a few years. So just like that element of it is very nice.
Everyone's happy to see each other.
Yeah.
Like every country, like Erin just said, it's been a long time since we haven't seen each other. So everyone's so happy. But that for sure, we're confined in this hotel. So we can go out, but there's a lot to do here. There's a pool, a gym, there's a dojo, there's everything that we need. So it's good.
Right on. And in preparation for this, how are you feeling? Are you feeling nervous? Are you feeling, apprehensive? And I ask that because, of course, as you mentioned, COVID and how it's impacted athletes in various amateur sports. How are you both feeling right at this moment? Considering you're competing and you've been through this lockdown, this series of lockdowns. How are you both feeling about that?
COVID is taking very seriously here. We have to do 3 tests and get tested like particularly every 2 days. So we're not stressed at all about COVID. We're wearing a mask and washing our hands. So we're feeling very good. It's not like a source of stress, but for the competition, I feel that we're both okay. Like we're gonna do the best that we can and let everything.
Yeah, I think that, it's been since actually the winter of 2019. So December was our last time training.
Wow.
And we actually only started again a few months ago because it was kind of up in the air. Is there going to be a world championship? Then who's going to be selected? And so it's been very fast paced. But an element of that, which is actually very calming, is that we had a very limited amount of time to train. And so we know this is not going to be the best performance we've ever done, but we've really like given it our all in our training sessions. So, we both have the attitude where it's such a wonderful experience to be here, to watch the other katas.
Right.
On top of that, to be able to compete with these amazing couples from around the world is just such an incredible thing. It's very exciting. So I think we're more excited than nervous.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Now let's jump right into it. Please give us a brief summary of a summary, a technique, and formalities, and highlight the purpose of Nage no Kata.
So the purpose of Nage no Kata, as far as I'm aware, is that there were a select number of techniques that were at the origination of judo. And so this performance is really highlighting the most detailed technical side of the basis of judo. And so it's, for us, the most important is there's levels to it. So, it starts in big mistakes, medium mistakes, small mistakes when we're actually competing. And for us, we're not really focused on our scores, but within that, how can we get the overall picture of each technique as close to what the goal of judo was at the beginning? And yeah, it's a really nice way to highlight the most simplest form of the sport, which is still pretty complicated. So.
Yeah.
Right on. For people who are not familiar with judo and its history and so on, what do you think the purpose of kata? I know you've answered it already, but break it down to us. How would you explain kata to someone who's not familiar with it?
So I always say that kata versus shiai, the fighting of judo, is the equivalent of figure skating versus hockey.
Wow.
That's the closest analogy as I can give it. But, one is very fast paced. It's all about vigor and strength and versus, that's the hockey side of it. And the kata and figure skating side is, you need kata to pass your black belt. It's always an examination. It's a performance, right? So I look at that as more of an art form versus less of an intense sporting event, and it still is, but it's a calmer side, I would say, and it's much more technical. So yeah, you need it for a lot of things. You need any like exam for different dans of a black belt, you need to do kata, and then kata in and of itself is half of judo, right? So
very cool. I really like that analogy. I think it would resonate with the Canadian audience, of course, because winter sports are very popular here. So
yeah.
that analogy is brilliant. Can you break down the criteria for the evaluation? Obviously, there's judges who evaluate and observe, and I think you briefly alluded to that initially in that first question there. What are they looking for? Well, what are some of the criteria that they're looking for in their evaluation?
Yeah, so they're looking for, like Erin just said, the small mistake, the big mistake, and the medium mistake. So they're looking overall if we're doing the technique like very good or with some mistakes. It's more than
it's basically like, yeah, no, I understand what you mean. It's basically like, for example, take Harai Goshi. So there are, even in Shiai, there's a specific way you do Harai. Everyone has their own style. So in Kata, it's about matching as much as we can the original style. And every team, in terms of a competition level of Kata, will have their different style for the techniques. But what the judges are trying to do on a more unbiased, objective level is, was the technique completed? So did the uke, who's Marika, the one falling, did she fall? Did I contact enough to make her fall with Harai Goshi? That's a big mistake. So if I miss the sweep, if she doesn't fall properly, that's in the big category. So many points are deducted for that. And then for the medium mistakes, it starts to get a bit more technical. And then, as you can assume, the small mistakes are the very, very little things. So how straight is my leg? Or how much is my hip contacted with hers? It keeps going down another level.
Very interesting. It seems like one obviously would have to have mastered the techniques accordingly and the forms. And I'm sure that with the judging and the evaluation, they scrutinize and they're very particular as to what they're looking for. Next question here, you've both kind of answered it, but there's a follow-up to it. I'll still ask you again. It's a personal question as to the motivations for training and competing in Kata. Well, what are the motivations for training? I know you've answered it already, but let me follow up by asking, how does Kata improve your judo? Does it improve your judo? If so, how?
So for me, I mean, I actually find that the most benefits come from things that actually have nothing to do with judo. I think that Kata has taught me really how important details are in everything. There are no shortcuts to really anything in life. And with Kata, it's not like you can just make your uke fall. You have to make them fall perfectly. And to get to that point, you have to focus on details. You have to be very diligent. And so it's just taught me sort of a work ethic for life that is so applicable to everything I do. So that's definitely one of my biggest motivators, is that, it's so like I can like totally take what I learn and use it in my everyday life.
Interesting. And for you, Marika?
For myself, it's more than I'm used to do Shiai like since I've been doing this since I was 5. So maybe Kata taught me to take the time to do things, because in Shiai you have your own style, your own way to do things, but in Kata you have to be perfect in everything. So it taught me to start properly and finish it well, not like doing this and being bad at the beginning and like throw someone. So it taught me to be perfect in everything that you're doing with all the details, as Erin just said.
I feel like also when I was doing Shiai, I relied a lot on my grip on whoever my competitor was. Like I relied much more on my strength because I was doing it at such a young age, that if you had that gi, you were good. They would either be given penalties for not attacking, or like there was still a way to win without being technically very proficient. And so I actually did a few classes with the McGill Judo, a few years after starting Kata and a few years after finishing Shiai. And when I went back, I was actually very surprised at how much better technically I got. You know, they are the most basic techniques, but you learn them so well that it really does carry over to the fighting side.
Because every step of it, you need to do it perfectly if you want to have a good nut at the end. So
this is really interesting because it seems like, and I'm just going to digress a little bit if you guys don't mind. In other combat sports, there are no, and even grappling-based combat sports, there are no real katas. Well, some have them, but some don't. But we don't tend to see, the benefit of having this approach to training. As you mentioned, it's bringing it back to the traditional form and style of the throws and trying to perfect them. The question that I have for you, within the judo community in Canada, how widely is kata performed? Is it popular? And if so, what's the demographic of people? Is it older people, younger people? Give us kind of an overview of that. I'm curious to know.
I feel like there's kind of a stigma a little bit against kata.
It's funny. I appreciate that you mentioned that, and please get into it.
So I feel like if you haven't done kata yet for your black belt, or even if you have, but you haven't advanced to second, third, fourth, so on dans, it seems very simple. You do the kata, you do it. You don't need to do it that well, but you need to do it well enough so that the judges pass you through to your black belt. And so it's really seen as a means to an end rather than a means in and of itself. And so there's this stigma that it's not as hard, doesn't take as much commitment or strength, or, there's so many things that people don't even really consider it as an avenue to go in judo. But I love the judo community so much. When I didn't really have an option when I was quitting Shiai. I thought that I was just going to stop judo. And so if there are things about Shiai that, might produce anxiety about the tournaments, it's too hard on your physical body, it's too much of a sacrifice, there is this avenue that for me has totally changed my life, because I'm so happy that I never stopped judo. It's so important to me.
And Marika, did you want to chime in on that?
Oh, no, it's okay.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, and it's interesting too, because there's certainly a need for there's more to the sport than just the competition and the fighting, and it's great to hear these perspectives and opinion as they apply to kata. Of course, what are your strengths as a team? What would you say your strengths are as a duo?
I think our strength is our chemistry. Like, we've known each other and been like really good friends since like 10 years. So that's our strength, that we are both on the same page. We are both so like aware of a small mistake that we don't want to make. That's our strength for me.
We're both perfectionists to some degree,
sure,
and so with kata, if there's one person who's more attuned to details and the other person either misses it or can't apply changes to those small details instantly, there's going to be a mismatch in communication and style. And the thing that's really nice with Marika and I is that we both want that same level of good details. We both are so committed to making changes so quickly. So it's never like one of us is lagging behind the other. We're very even keeled.
And as we said, Erin said that we are both perfectionists. Is like, even if we don't have something, we will try it again till we have it. So that's very good in kata, because we don't make like small mistakes on something that we worked on.
Were you perfectionist prior to doing kata as well, or was this something that was that happened while engaging
maybe
in kata?
Just in terms of every day in life, we are so.
Oh, in life as well.
With some things I am, with other things I'm not. Like
that's cool. That's cool.
No, like I'm a pretty passive person in some areas of my life, which is sometimes to my detriment. But because I just like, when you have such a love for a sport, you're so committed to excellence as best as you can, like it's only within your reach. Everyone has a limit, but we both know that if we haven't reached our limit, we will get there if we, buckle down and focus. So we're on that same page.
Right on. Speak to us about your coach and his approach to teaching you both, because you mentioned perfectionist, and I want to hear that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay. So Hiroshi Nakamura has been both of our coaches at Shidokan since we started judo. Yeah. And he has such a unique style to coaching. It's very sit back, watch, see if we can recognize our own mistakes. And if we can't, then he will give us his point of view. But I think that's his overall teaching style, where he will definitely give feedback, very good constructive criticism. He will never say that was amazing. And so if he ever says good, you feel very proud, because he doesn't say a lot. He kind of lets us figure out our own way a lot of the time.
But we have a very good relation with him. He's so open mind to what we're doing and let us do what we want to do but he came with the idea of giving every Sensei Nakamura's touch in everything that we're doing. So he's the perfect coach. He's been coaching since 60 years old.
He came for a long time. And most coaches would have said, oh, you guys haven't trained in 2 years. Marika doesn't live in Montreal. She lives in Fermont. So it's hard to coordinate a training schedule. Yeah. And we hadn't trained in so long that when I called Sensei this summer and I told him that we had been selected to potentially go to Portugal for the World Championships, not for 1 second did he say, didn't hesitate. No, there was no hesitation. The fact that we wanted to do it, even if we were going to be undertrained, a little rusty, he was totally there for us and there to support us in our training. And as much as we could train, he was happy that we were going to get this experience.
That's awesome. Speak to us about just that situation right there, that phone call and what happened afterwards. How did you guys prepare? You said you haven't been training since December 2019, so you picked up training recently, I suppose. How did that? What was the plan of action?
So, as Erin just said, I live in Fermont, who's 14 hours drive from Montreal. So I came in Montreal 1 month ago to train a full 4 days of training, intense training and everything. And during the off mat, the time that I'm back to Fermont and Erin's in Montreal, we're very working on our cardio and our strength, in the gym, to keep it up. And after 4 days before leaving, we train every day, 2 hours a day, with Sensei Nakamura always there to tell us what to do and what to focus on for the training. And here in Portugal, so we arrived yesterday, and today we're gonna train tonight, and we're gonna do a little cardio too. So it's kind of look like this, our training.
Kata is definitely riding a bike in many ways, where we haven't done it in 2 years. The first time we did it and we got on the mat, it was definitely a little nerve-wracking, because like we said before, we both want a level of perfection. So us getting back into it and being rusty might be a little bit of a disappointment. But even though a lot of the details and the technical input that you have to match wasn't really there at the beginning when we started training back in September of this year, we didn't forget anything. So that was a level of confidence that we had, just knowing that after 2 years, nothing just disappeared from our minds. It's part of our body now.
Right on. And as far as the community in Montreal, speak to us in regards to the dojo. What sort of support have you been getting from teammates and so on?
Well, in Montreal, I'm very careful with COVID, right? Because I do see family members and I do see my own little bubble. Even though COVID's gotten better, it's still, you still have to be very careful. So I actually haven't really interacted with much of the judo community in Montreal.
Right.
Outside of that, though, my friends, my family, they're all so supportive, so happy for us that we decided we wanted to come and put in the effort to train and compete. So, like Sensei Nakamura, we've been really training one-on-one with him, which is again why seeing the whole team feels like there's that level of support again.
Now, you mentioned earlier on that you've competed at 4 world championships previously, or this will be your fourth
This is the
one,
fourth,
correct?
yeah.
This is the fourth. What's the vibe like? I mean, obviously things are different now because of COVID, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But what is the vibe like at a Kata World Championship? What you've got 206 competitors from 25 countries this time around. And is it a friendly environment? Is it a competitive, cutthroat environment with a bunch of perfectionists? Or is it very chill and relaxed? Well, what's the vibe like?
What's nice is that as you go to more international tournaments for Kata, you do see familiar faces. You do kind of know some of the other teams. And so the teams that you recognize, everyone's really friendly. The day of the competition, people are more reserved into themselves because you're in such a state of focus. But even here at the hotel now, it's the same feeling that all of the other world championships had, where everyone's just happy to be here. Everyone's happy that we're all among such a high level of our sport. It's a very nice feeling of community, even though there are countries from every corner of the earth. So it's very friendly.
Big general question here for both of you. What do you find the most challenging in this kata and in this form? Like what do you find as a duo? What is it that's which tro or technique or formality do you both find the most challenging?
Maybe as we said, we are so perfectly perfection people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like know that everything's not perfect and we have to let go of something that's not perfect. So for my side, it's this.
There are definitely some techniques that give us a little bit more trouble than others. What's nice though, or a little concerning at times, is that those techniques always change. So we could be training 2 years ago and a certain technique was the one that was the most difficult for us. And then this year we're training now again. That technique's fine. And then there's another one that is now a little harder. So technically it kind of, it does come and go which ones are harder. I think that you underestimate how much cardio it takes. You underestimate the strength that it takes to still maintain the whole 5 series of Nagi no Kata. And so I think that's something that's also hard for both of us because, we are so focused technically, but then to have the motivation to train off the mat, we have to really want it to have the right cardio and to have the right strength. So I think for me, that's probably an element that's the hardest.
That's really interesting because I've been watching a lot of videos in preparation for this interview, and one of the things, seriously, one of the things that's not fully discussed is that the physical preparation, in the sense that there's a lot of technicalities, but obviously competitors are really they have to be physically fit. They need endurance, they need flexibility, strength for the different forms that they're doing. Which country is known to be really strong outside of Japan? Which country is really known to be very dominant?
Spanish team is very, very strong, and the Italian team, in terms of actual pure physical strength, they're men, and we can train as hard as we want and as hard as it would permit us to have the strongest kata, but we do have female bodies, and like two men that are competing that are just naturally have a very big physique. They can generate power that teams that are smaller can't. And so I would definitely say the Spanish and the Italian teams are very physically strong.
Yeah, I was just looking here. The Spanish team is sending 22 individuals, and the Italians are sending 18. So they're definitely there and representing. In terms of, like, this is more of a philosophical marketing question, if you guys don't mind, for the general combat sports fan. For spectators, what do they get out of watching, kata versus a fight? And how should one observe kata? And I'm asking this broadly and philosophically, like, you know, how can we appreciate it if we have no connection to the sport?
That's a good one.
I know it's a loaded question. Sorry.
It's actually hard to answer because, you know, even thinking about my parents, when they first started taking me to kata tournaments, they had no idea.
Yeah.
They knew what they were watching because they've been part of the judo fan club for like many years. But when you don't know the technicalities of it, you can watch a kata and as a general observer be like, wow, that's a beautiful performance.
Yeah.
You do miss a lot of the technical needs of the sport if you don't really understand kata specifically, because you're not really from one team to the next, you're not really sure what you're watching all the time, you know. But what is interesting is every team has their own flair on the sport, you know. So it is really, for me, even though I know kata, like watching the whole competition to see how different teams kind of use their creativity, even though you think of it as very objectively technical, it is very interesting.
And it's artistic kata. Whatever kata you're doing, it's so artistic. It's beautiful to see. Like it's like if you're watching someone dancing, because everything is simultaneous. Me and Erin are always at the same time getting up, and always there's a chemistry that you can see when you don't know what's kata. That's good to see, but it's artistic. It's a dance.
Yeah, it's incredible, and I almost think that would it be fair to say one would have to have a high judo IQ to really appreciate kata, like in terms as a spectator? Would you say one would have to have that?
Definitely. I think that, you know, kata background, kata knowledge is definitely useful for watching
Yeah.
kata, because I think that before I actually started kata, even at the level of just doing it for my black belt, if I watched a competition, I'd be more focused on the strengths of the throws and, you know, the more observable outward aspects of it, you know. So you need a kata IQ more than anything to actually really be able to appreciate it.
It's once you know how hard it is, you're gonna appreciate looking at the other one doing it, because you know how hard it is to get up, how hard it is to throw the person on this technique. So when you're doing it and know this, it's so like beautiful to watch.
For sure. If we can step away for 1 second and talk about your competition days, what was your go-to throw when you were both competing? Starting with you, Marika, what was your go-to, your favorite throw?
Mine was definitely Ogoshi, but on the left side. So I'm a fighter who's fighting on the right, but Ogoshi I'm always go on the left. So that's why it's a little my kind of tricks.
Mine
For
was
you?
definitely Haraigoshi.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Remember.
And overall, now that you're competing, that you know you're training in kata and so on, do you ever go back to doing any randori outside of kata? Do you still compete in house and so on?
I did at the start of my university, like my first year at McGill. I was helping to like assistant coach a little bit for the judo class at the gym. And I was also doing some of the fighting for a very short period of time. You know, my real love now does lie with kata. So it's very different. It is really nice to get back into it, but I think I would need to train a lot more, you know, like strength and cardio if I actually wanted to take the fighting seriously.
How do you both remain, you know, as you mentioned, the being synchronized, being in tune, and having that chemistry while you're doing the kind of, how do you remain alert, focused, and in sync? I know it's a general question, but it seems like I was just looking at the criteria that's a very important component to it. So how do you guys do that, and how do you practice for that? Because it seems visually, like as you mentioned, Marika, it's a dance, right? It's almost
Yeah.
like a dance. And I think when you watch dancers, you can appreciate that element. So how does one train for that?
One of our secrets is only to count. like 1-2, like when we're bowling down 1-2 and then 1-2 getting up. It's very like calm. And I think the chemistry that we have, we only look at each other and we know that it's time or it's not time, or we have to go slow or faster. We just know because of this.
Right on.
Yeah.
And
Oh no, I was just gonna say that, like there are certain requirements, like in general, what we've been taught is that it's a 4 count for many of the bows. There's always the same leg that you start your walks with. There are still rules that you should be following. So that definitely helps a lot. And like Marika said, there is an art to very subtly being able to read your partner. So I can tell if Marika needs me to take a bit more time reaching her before another technique starts. It's also really about us knowing each other, like you said.
so is it almost, I don't know if I'm reaching it, but is it almost intuitive at times because it's a dynamic that's built over years of practice? So you have that intuitive sort of understanding and be able to communicate in that form. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah. And just, we do practice the whole 5 series a lot of the time with just uchikomi. And when we're doing it that way, that's when we're really focusing on timing to make sure it's very in sync. And that's how we practice that.
Right on. I have a few more questions for you. One of which is, what's the best advice your coach has given you, both individually or collectively? What's
Oh,
Sorry.
on my side, it's relax, Marika, relax. Because I'm always so stiff because I'm used to fight. And he always told me, Marika, relax. Just like when Erin throw you out, relax. And for me, it's the best advice he gives me.
I honestly,
He
like
has so
my
many,
brain
he
is
has so
so
many, yeah.
overloaded with, my own mental representations of things he's taught me throughout the years. I think without saying anything, the best advice he's ever given me is just like he really leads by example in terms of like this inner calm that he has. You need to be ferocious, you need to be fierce, but you do it with a grace and a calm. And he's like been such a role model for that. So I think that's what he's taught me the most.
Now, if I could go back, Marika, to your point about being about relaxing, what do you do to relax when you're in that mode? Is there a particular routine? Is there a breathing technique? Is there something that you do to relax?
I breathe. Like sometimes Erin just like pull me, then it expires. Like take
And
a
inhale.
deep.
Right.
And now, yeah. And
Right.
after when I fall, I just like exhale. So that's the best advice.
You
Right
do
on.
forget to breathe a lot of the
Yeah,
time.
we forget.
It's hard because you're focused so much on other things that even though the most basic part of the whole thing, which is just like breathing for life, you
Yeah.
do forget to do it. So
You do need to breathe, that's for sure.
I need
Right?
to breathe. Yeah.
So guys, I really appreciate this. I have two more questions. One, I know you have to go to practice soon, but I just wanted to
Yeah.
know, what advice do you have? Would you give to someone who's interested in learning, in exploring this in their own judo? What sort of advice would you give them as far as exploring kata?
For me, I would say the first thing is don't knock it till you try it.
Yeah.
Don't go into it with preconceived notions of how easy it may be, how simple, how boring. It has really fulfilled me, and I've had a lot of stimulation throughout my whole life from judo. And so it fulfills a different set of needs. Really understand like who you are as a person, be very self-aware of like what things for me, like I said, the details, like feeling like I can be proficient in details is something that really, adds to my self-esteem, my confidence in life. So know your needs and go into it with a very open mind and see if it's a good match for you.
Marika, did you want to, you agree with that? Did you
Yeah.
want to say so? Yeah. Okay.
Certainly. Instead of
Cool. Yeah, this is really, I really appreciate hearing this. For me, it's really a learning opportunity. And if I can just be brutally honest, I remember 20 years ago, of in conversation with someone speaking about this particular topic, and myself not being even close to open to this notion of kata, and over the years, of course, as the more you learn, because you're continuously idealistically you want to continuously be opening your perspective to different points of views. You begin to see the value of things that you might have been misinformed on or not aware of, and there's certainly a lot to gain from kata as competitors in this sport. How long do you see yourselves competing?
This is tricky because as a team, who knows if this is going to be our last competition together. That's why we jumped at the chance, because we do live so far from each other. I don't want to ever stop.
Wow.
I have no idea. I want to continue on to grad school, hopefully to get my doctorate of clinical psychology one day, hopefully soon. And so I have no idea where that's going to take me in the world. I think that part of me would be heartbroken if I was ever, not part of Judo Canada, but I don't plan on stopping no matter where life takes me.
And what are your, I guess this is the last question, or what does it mean for you to be competing here? This is your fourth go around. And what does it mean for you both to be competing here after the last 2 years of this pandemic? Ultimately, what does this mean to you both?
For me, there was COVID hit everyone very hard, mentally, emotionally, physically. I really didn't know when the next time I would be doing judo is, if I would ever be at a high level kata competition again. There were a lot of unknowns. And I think that part of the pandemic, I went through a really hard time where what normally judo would have been a solace for me, a safe haven, it really helps your life. I couldn't have that anymore. So the fact that it's just in my life at this moment again, and we're able to be here is, mentally so fulfilling, emotionally is making me so happy, so excited. And physically, I'm really happy to get back in shape again.
Right on. Well, I guess the last question I have for you both is, what are you hoping for come tomorrow? You're competing tomorrow, correct? Or is it, yeah. What are your intentions going into the competition?
Only do our best, I think.
Yeah,
we don't want to do big mistake. Like if we're doing small and medium mistake, for us it's okay. We just want to do the best that we can do.
We really haven't had a lot of time to train. So yeah, like Marika said, we want to go on really for ourselves, just be the best that we have done in the past 2 months. If it's the best kata we've done in that time frame, we'll be so happy. And I think in addition to that, really soak up all the other teams' katas too.
Well, you know what? It's really cool that you guys jumped on this opportunity, and you're clearly very, you're enthusiastic, you're confident, and I just want to wish you both all the best. And thank you. Thank you very much for your time, and I think you have to go to practice soon, so I'll let you go. But all the best, and thank you for this great interview.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.